Most beautiful, inventive and inspirational new homes in the country go head-to-head in a competition organised by the Royal Institute of British Architects to find the best house in Britain.
We'll be exploring the remarkable homes longlisted for this year's prize.
Oh, there's your reveal.
Before discovering which have made the shortlist.
Oh, I'm in a spaceship.
We've already seen the first 2 homes to go through. Now we're investigating 5 more delightful houses, all inspired by water.
So this is very exciting, which I hesitate to take in one big gulp, but actually, wow.
They infuse the imagination, like all the buildings in the competition.
And I can simply waft to the bed in my nightdress.
All of which are magical, distinctive, cleverly designed and beautiful.
This is triumphant.
At the end of this episode, we'll find out which watery home goes through to the shortlist. And then in the final programme, we'll discover the winner here on Channel 4.
You have to look at the degree of tenacity, innovation, persistence, and this project has it all.
There can be only one winner, only one building lucky enough to be awarded the most celebrated prize for residential architecture in Britain. The 2017 House of the Year.
So far, we've seen houses inspired by local materials, and 2 of them have made it onto the shortlist: the quiet and considered Shoreham House and the sculptural and rather epic Caring Wood. In this episode, we're looking at homes inspired by water.
We are, let us not forget, a maritime, seafaring nation. For the size of our country, our coastline is one of the longest. So it's not surprising that we've developed a sophisticated language of architecture for building by the water, which, by the way, includes locks, rivers, lakes, tidal estuaries, streams, brooks, burns, pools, ponds, lagoons.
Exploring these buildings with me are architect Damion Burrows.
The closer you get, the more intriguing it is.
And editor-at-large of Elle Decoration, Michelle Ogundehin, who headed to the south coast in search of our first home, a sumptuous clifftop villa.
The White Cliffs of Dover are one of England's most iconic landmarks. But how do you begin to build a house here? How do you compete with nature? Perhaps the answer is you don't. You build a house that feels like it's been part of the cliff all along.
Jutting from the cliff is a clean white ribbon of chalk. Ness Point, a house which the judges describe as growing out of the land in which it is embedded. Its undulating walls look as though they're from the rock beneath and hunker into the hill, directly mirroring the dramatic and slightly more craggy White Cliffs of Dover. It draws on the language of 30s seaside villas and belongs to interior designer Logan McWatt and his family. The front of the house curves sensuously, with a living room and 3 reception rooms below and 4 elegant bedrooms above. The spaces are modest, and every inch is put to good use.
Hello.
Hi, Michelle.
Oh, my goodness, I can see why you picked this spot for a house. It's amazing.
Oh, thank you.
It really feels almost like a bit of a castle on the top of the cliff here.
All our family is Scottish, and I really wanted to bring some of that Scottish feel down into this corner of the UK.
Logan's parents moved to Kent when he was 7, so it's an area he knows well. After living in Hong Kong for 30 years, he returned to England and took the radical decision to demolish his parents' house and build something new.
I've lived in high-rise apartment blocks, and I really wanted to have a house where you walk out and you're onto a veranda, You're on terra firma, and you can call the house your own. The curves of the house do echo the curves of the cliff on Ness Point.
So in a way, you've sort of built your own little bit of cliff here.
Definitely.
It's not just the outside of the building that's unusual. Inside, the judges loved its imaginative layout.
This is great. It feels like you're really bedded into the cliff here, and then it just sort of opens out in front of me.
Well, that was the idea.
And what's going on down here?
This gallery is lit by the skylight above, and we can transform the space so all these doors can fold back. This is the kitchen area. It can be fully open, and that allows the dining room, for example, next door to be operated in its own right.
These are very easy to open as well.
And then this can open up, and in fact, then the light from the front comes right through to the deep part of the house as well. Well, the idea was to have a flexible arrangement so that if my children are having a dinner party, this can be separated off from the sitting room while I can do my own thing.
This flexibility continues upstairs with bedrooms that open into each other and en suites hidden behind movable screens.
This is what it's all about, isn't it? This is the grand finale of your house.
We've had snapshots of the view, but in fact, this is the big picture.
I mean, I guess when you have living paintings like this, you don't really need wallpaper, do you?
You don't.
On a clear day, you can see the coast of France shimmering on the horizon. It's a view you could never tire of.
Oh, I love that. It's beautiful. I can really imagine myself lying in the bath here, checking out Dover, France, the views, and the sky. Nice.
Logan was based in Hong Kong for most of the project, so responsibility for realizing this curvaceous design lay with the architect, Mike Tonkin, and his team.
It seems like the dream spot to build a house here overlooking this fantastic view, but we are on the edge of a cliff. I mean, were you not worried about the whole house falling into the sea?
Well, we did have an enormous cliff collapse a few years ago. We got a call from Logan, hold everything.
Oh, my gosh.
And so that was a bit scary. But we did some research and worked out he had 400 years.
Oh, OK, so you're safe for 400
so
years.
Okay. Exactly, yeah.
The building also has all these fantastic curvy shapes and curved glass as well. That feels like it'd be really expensive and really complicated.
It used to be really expensive, curved glass. It used to cost 3 times normal glass, but now it does cost 1.3 times. So actually, it's a bit expensive, but there's just a few pieces of it. So what we did is put the curved glass where you really notice it.
The structure of the house was formed with a steel frame and concrete blockwork to resist the weather here. By curving the walls rather than all the windows, Mike's design was cheap and straightforward to build. Only the 2 main picture double-glazed windows are formed using curved glass. To make these sinuous shapes, the glass is heated to 700 degrees. When smolderingly hot, it enters a series of rollers which bend the glass into a perfect curve. The result is a delightful, rhythmic building that can be readily adapted to Logan and his family's changing needs.
Logan knocked down his parents' house to build this. I don't want his kids to knock down this house. Hopefully it's flexible enough to sort of change its life.
I think this house is here to stay. But while it speaks of the chalk cliffs here, it also has to engage in conversation with its neighbours. The locality is populated with an established mix of period buildings, so anything new was going to be controversial.
Reminds me a bit of Hollywood, but Hollywood is not around here, so I think something more English would be nicer to see. I think it's a bit out of place.
Curved houses, they're sort of more organic in a way and seem to fit more beautifully with the landscape, although fitting furniture in curvy walls might be quite tricky.
This is the life. I wonder if someone could just bring me a G&T.
Good architecture can change the way we live, But Ness Point demonstrates how expediently it can be done, using sliding walls and adaptable spaces instead of vast rooms, and capturing different sliced views.
This house is like a modern-day castle. It owns this bit of the cliff. It's also clever and flexible and future-proof for the next generation. You can really imagine it standing here, proudly looking out to sea for years to come.
So, Ness Point sets the bar high for this year's competition. But we've got 4 more long-listed homes to show you.
All this absolutely reeks of craftsmanship, difficulty and expense.
All of which take their inspiration from water. All of which hope to secure a coveted place on the shortlist.
You are sort of gobsmacked when you approach this building. People don't realise it's a house. They think it's a sort of caravan on some sticks.
The riverside location for this next project provided all the inspiration it needed. The industrial warehouse buildings that were previously on the site were an unlikely starting point for a powerful, jaw-dropping building.
Built on the banks of the River Ouse in Lewes in East Sussex, South Street is a case study in elegant, modern design. The house is home to Stephen and Anita Yeomans and their family, and we were lucky enough to follow it for grand designs.
I've always had an interest and passion for contemporary and modern design. I think I just like beautifully made, sort of well-considered things.
They found a narrow waterside site and weren't afraid to build something bold.
Oh, look, you look polished and relaxed and as composed as your building is. It looks like bronze. It's marvellous the way it changes character.
It's absolutely beautiful. We often say it's even exceeded our expectations.
What you got is a bit of class, a bit of rusty class.
Squeezed between cliff, road and river, the house comprises a ground-floor glass box of living space with a utility room tucked behind. Upstairs, there are 5 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms under the rusty roof. The house occupies nearly all of its small riverside site.
This is nice. It's very compressed and dark, this entrance. This is very exciting. Bit of theatre.
Absolutely.
Yeah? You get drawn towards the light, don't you?
Exactly. It creates this really dramatic entrance.
Yeah, which I hesitate to take in one big gulp, but actually, wow.
This place may appear fierce and brutal outside, but inside it is all warm and woody, a world of craftsmanship. The judges for this year's competition described the living room as a window to the world, taking maximum advantage of the expansive river views. This place is so meticulous there's not a hair out of place.
The fridge is behind this door here. This is the larder.
There's the toaster cupboard. In an age when our kitchens are part of our living rooms and dining rooms, as it's one space, the kitchen has to become then part of the furniture.
Exactly.
And then you have to make another kitchen somewhere else to actually cook in, or put it in a cupboard, which is what you've done with your toaster.
It was a difficult project from the word go, and many of the locals opposed the contentious decision to clad the building in rusty Corten steel. The then mayor was appalled.
Ugly, in one word. We want to reflect our industrial heritage, but I'm just not sure that an ugly building sticking out like a sore thumb is quite the way to go about reflecting that heritage.
It wasn't just angry neighbours that Stephen and Anita had to contend with. The site itself was a scrap of rubbish land sandwiched between the river and a dual carriageway.
When we first viewed the site, really lacked promise. I think it was a piece of land that no commercial developer would have touched with a barge pole.
It was a former cement factory, so excavations were made difficult by the industrial junk hidden in the ground.
Stephen and Anita gave us an awful lot of trust and a lot of freedom to just get on with the project and use the sort of talents and skills of the people that are around us. That made the project a real success.
The building's design was inspired by the dockyard warehouses that historically lined the river. The architect, Sandy Rendell, has really embraced the house's industrial past in both its shapes and his choice of materials. It was built using a mixture of structurally insulated panels that slot together like a giant jigsaw, a steel frame, and some beautiful board-marked concrete. It was the cladding, however, that proved most controversial, made from a skin of expanded perforated weathering steel. The material's bright when it's milled, but when it gets exposed to the elements, it quickly develops a durable rusty coating. The cladding was extremely challenging to get right.
Looking back at the project, despite a lot of effort and work and time spent on that cladding, it did work out. In a way, it is also the building's greatest single triumph, isn't it?
Yeah, I think probably, but working with the cladding was a challenge in itself. I probably expected too much of it, but I think in the grand scheme of things, it's much less significant than I felt at the time.
Yeah.
For Sandy and the team, the cladding was a real ordeal. Because of a defective batch of steel, the perforations in the sheets didn't line up.
Oh, I'm really disappointed, I have to say.
The standards on this project are extraordinarily high. And for Sandy, anything short of perfection was failure.
I'm not in the mood for accepting stuff that's not right.
Well, I don't think we should at all.
The manufacturers finally replaced the cladding, and Sandy managed to execute his design with this striking and controversial material.
How's it been received in Lewis?
I think increasingly warmly. It's incredibly prominent. You see it from the train, you see it from the road, you see it from the nature reserve. You can't avoid it, really. I mean, I'd like to think that it might open people's minds to more contemporary architecture in Lewis.
That ambition is laudable, but of course, not everyone's convinced.
I suppose it's quite an unusual building, so you can see why a judging panel would go for something a bit different. But I just hope to goodness there's some much more attractive buildings out there somewhere that might win.
There is no such thing as universal taste. There's no denying, however, this house is a gateway building to the town. Perched, chiselled and strong. A marker for walkers and for river and road traffic. And Stephen and Anita love this home. It binds them to this place.
Being so connected to nature and the weather patterns and the rise and the fall of the river, it's added something hugely special to our lives.
This house, of course it'll have its detractors. Of course people will say it's just a rusting metal box. But it is a beautifully designed and exquisitely crafted rusting metal box. And in the world of architecture, that makes all the difference. Living by the coast, you want a house which drinks in the views and soaks up the seaside atmosphere. However, if you want to be really close to the sea, you have to build a house that isn't afraid to get wet.
Essex is probably not the first place that springs to mind when you think of lonely, windswept beaches and rare, endangered wildlife. But hidden in these remote inlets and estuaries is Colne Point Nature Reserve. And somewhere in this watery landscape is our next house. As architect Damion Burrows discovered, this year's long-listed buildings come in all shapes and sizes. And some of them don't even look like houses at all.
This stunning area is incredibly popular with bird watchers. And the house that I've come to have a look at is actually named after a seabird, the Red Shank. It's an elegant, beautiful bird with long red legs and a speckled brown body. And if I'm not mistaken, yeah, I think I've just spotted one.
Perched in the salt marsh, this bird-like building is a compact one-bedroom house designed as a studio for sculptor Marcus Taylor. Marcus and his family built their first house here in 2010, and when an adjacent plot came up for sale, he saw a chance to do something wildly different.
Marcus, this looks like it's waiting to sort of take off and start walking somewhere.
We had a picture of the Red Shank with its legs coming out of the water. It just felt right for this landscape.
At only 49 square metres, Red Shank packs in an open-plan kitchen and living area, a small balcony, 1 bedroom and 1 bathroom. It's so tiny, you may be wondering how it waded its way onto the long list. But the judges described it as extraordinary. Built using giant timber panels, it's beautifully detailed and deals effortlessly with a challenging site. It's not just built next to the sea. Twice a day when the tides rise, it's actually in it.
This becomes an island, this part of the coast. I don't know if you've ever tried to dig into water, but it doesn't work very well.
Yeah, no.
It was a bit of a learning curve for everybody involved. There were several occasions when builders' tools floated off down the creek.
How about all the panelling for the build itself?
There were trials at times. The first panel that was lifted off turned into a huge sail, which swung all over the place and hit the crane.
You get hit by one of those?
Yeah, I didn't think it'd survive. And in fact, I think everybody was pretty scared in that first lift.
Yeah.
We had to dump the first one into the marsh.
One of the most striking elements of this building is its cladding, cork. Actually, a surprisingly weatherproof material. It's durable, lightweight, an excellent insulator, fire, rot and mold resistant, and beautiful. Portugal supplies 50% of the world's cork. Its cork oak forests cover 1 million hectares. Every 9 years, the tree's bark is stripped and then completely regrows, making the process 100% sustainable. When compressed at high temperatures, the shredded cork expands and sap within it melts, gluing it all together. There are no added ingredients, and the final product is completely natural. Once cooled, these giant cork bricks can be cut to measure, and the cladding is ready to go.
Wow. I wasn't expecting this. You come from outside, from the bluster and the wind, and as soon as you're in here, it's just calm. And the view is just incredible.
That's quite exciting. I mean, it's, you know, waking up in the middle of the night sometimes and realising you're totally surrounded by water, especially on a very still night when there's nothing else but the water and the moonlight.
This eccentric sculptural house feels right at home in this otherworldly landscape. Its long red legs are reminiscent of the Maunsell sea forts dotted off the Essex coast. And it's surrounded by an architectural mishmash of derelict buildings, wind turbines, and sea junk.
Well, it's really like the place that time forgot. It's like these ghost towns that you see in America that just appear out of nowhere. But this has an added effect because it's like it's been washed in from the beach. I think what Marcus has done here has been absolutely quite amazing. We thought it looked rather like the War of the Worlds, these giant things with sort of long legs that were sort of marching their way along the planet.
Against this stark, isolated backdrop, Marcus and his architect, Lisa Schell, have made a building that is both solitary and self-assured.
The site itself has so many constraints on it, with the tide and elevating the building. How did you cope with that?
This is a really awful thing to say because I think it's completely wonderful here, but you've sort of left civilization, haven't you? You've got to the edge of the world, and you can do what you want.
How much did you end up spending in the end? Or what was the budget?
We certainly didn't meet Marcus's intended £100,000 budget, let's say that.
Were we a little bit out?
We were
or
quite a bit out.
We were quite a bit out. Sort of not, can't touch it out?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, yeah, we did end up with quite a sort of finely crafted, high-spec, you know, nicely detailed house. And then we spent again to raise it up off the ground, support it on sand, and cantilever it.
I'm just putting another zero end at each one of those sentences.
I'll leave it with you.
Okay, all right, I'll draw my own conclusions. I absolutely love it. And obviously, the judges loved it as well.
I mean, I think we never really intended to enter it for any prizes. I mean, but I think once we'd built it, it sort of dawned upon us that actually it is quite an extraordinary thing that we've done.
You know, and the idea that this nice little house could be recognised as, you know, House of the Year would be really extraordinary and unexpected, I have to say.
Yeah. Well, I wish you luck with it. The design of this building really does stand out for me. Lisa and Marcus have drawn upon the influences what surround them, plucking inspiration from military forts, natural materials and resident birds to create this wonderful, experimental collage of a building.
There are only 2 more spectacular homes to explore before we discover who's made it to the shortlist for the 2017 House of the Year. One of the greatest magical tricks that architecture can play is to lift us out from where we are, to mentally transport us from, say, a grubby urban environment and take us to another beautiful place that is literally otherworldly. Seaside architecture doesn't have to be constrained by geography. The most imaginative of us can bring the seaside anywhere.
And that's what our next house does magnificently.
This programme is all about coastal architecture in the 21st century. And yet, I find myself in North London walking up a hill, and that's because there is a man who, for years, has been determined to build his seaside house here.
Weird, wonderful, and quite at odds with its surroundings, 6 Wood Lane stands out like a perfectly executed sculptural sore thumb. It's home to interior designer Sally Cox and architect Mike Russum, a man whose work follows an unconventional path. The house rises out of its 7-metre-wide driveway site in one of North London's most exclusive neighbourhoods.
Hello.
Hi. Good to see you. I'm Mike Russell.
Pleased to meet you, Mike. Hi.
Hi, Kevin. Lovely to meet you.
And you, and you. And thanks very much for inviting me in, or round.
Yeah.
I mean, round. You know, the first thing that strikes me, it is radical, which is very enjoyable, but there's a strong nautical flavour to the building, isn't there, in the detailing?
Yes.
This is a kind of mystery vessel that's arrived. I think we try and deliver something joyous that's beyond the normal expectation.
Let's embark.
The judges compared the house to a ship run aground in suburbia. The roof is an upturned hull. Its windows are portholes. Even the entrance is up a gangplank. In the basement of this 4-storey building, 2 bedrooms are anchored into the garden. Above that, on the upper deck, are an entrance hall, a studio, bathroom, and an elegant staircase that sweeps up into the elliptical living area. Here, Mike has formed a unique kitchen dining space, and it's all topped off by a dazzling glazed winter garden. For sheer originality and brilliance, it deserves its place on the long list.
You'll have to come up and see our living space up here.
Oh, wow, this is a staircase straight out of HMS Belfast. Oh, man alive. Good heavens. Oh, this is completely remarkable. It doesn't feel like a building at all. Oh, I'm in a spaceship now. I thought it was sort of a naval vessel, that this building would float away. But I see now it's sort of designed for takeoff more than, you know, anything else. It's incredible.
The judges were impressed by the way modern living has been totally reimagined. The hall contains a lighthouse. The windows are straight off a boat, and the balcony juts out like the prow of a ship. The only rectangular rooms are the basement bedrooms, which flow out into the landscaped garden. Building something like this could not have been easy.
Tell me what the major hurdles were.
Well, the principal one always is getting planning consent. We find the planners seek a replication of normality, even if it's the most mundane, poor quality building stock. They just want a facsimile of it.
Yeah.
Getting planning took over 2 years by appeal. That took £30,000 out of our budget. It's taken longer than we would hope.
When did you start work in the ground? Which year?
Oh, I don't remember now.
Which century?
It was this century.
Which decade?
It was.
I don't remember.
I'd have to go but it's taken a long time.
Well, exactly,
Let's put
because it's
like that.
clearly long enough for you to have forgotten exactly where.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah.
The entire process took 12 years. Building a surreal modern townhouse in a leafy conservation area on a narrow plot was never going to be easy. It's not just the design that's unconventional, the method of construction was just as demanding. The main body of the house was prefabricated off-site using boat-building techniques and then craned into place. And of course, this arduous project succeeded in aggravating many of the local residents.
Of course you must pooh-pooh all that's fresh and new and declare it crude and mean, for art stopped short at the cultivated court of the Empress Josephine. And that is, of course, from Gilbert and Sullivan's operetta Patience. But it really does summarize the reaction of an awful lot of people to the idea that we should have this very original, very imaginative building in Wood Lane.
We've lived here since 1970, and some people think the house is hideous, some people think it's interesting. It's a matter of taste.
The actual building phrase took years and was a genuine blight on the neighborhood because it really was pretty awful.
I think it really reminds me of like a spaceship that's just kind of landed in a little gap.
I can see why people wouldn't like it because it isn't something that goes with the area.
Well, I've had the hors d'oeuvre and I've had, I think, probably the main course, but I'm sure there's pudding, isn't there?
Yeah.
It takes a while to drink all this in. All this absolutely reeks of craftsmanship. I'm beginning to understand the story of this thing now. A ramp to every level. Oh, wow. I thought this was a control room. It's not. It's a sculpting space and a lounge area.
Yes. With
And it's
fantastic
rather nice. You
views.
get,
Isn't it just? Oh, you're right up here in the canopy. It's like a treetop house up here, isn't it?
this extent of south-facing glazing gets very hot in here. So that's a mechanism which lifts the circular lantern. Do you want to see it operate?
Yeah, I'd love to.
At the moment,
I'm expecting it to make a real Wallace and Gromit noise.
So if we do this, you'll see. So now it's coming down. It's very slow, but you can see by that mechanism there, that's got a kind of magic eye on it that stops it grinding its way down into the timber drum.
This is quite triumphant, isn't it?
At every turn, there is another little detail to delight and intrigue. And Mike, a man after my own heart, has built a glorious man cave at the end of the garden.
So in an age when buildings try and disguise what they are and what they do in the pursuit of some kind of sleek ambiguity, this building wears its heart and its machinery on its sleeves. So here, for example, are the heating intakes here and vents here for blowing out here. Here are the sound speakers, the landing lights, and in here, the controls for the rocket boosters. Why go to all the trouble in the end? Why go to this trouble? What drives you? What makes the difference here? What is worth it?
I think we're maximising the opportunity to enjoy how you live. So these are highly tuned spaces that deliver very special experiences.
You really feel very different. I do anyway. I feel very differently in the different spaces. It's quite inspirational as well.
Who wouldn't want to sail away in this ship of a building for the rest of their lives? It's imaginative, adventurous, challenging, sociable.
Now, any good building has a responsibility to us to look after us so that we can flourish in it. You know, that's what architecture is partly about. But very few buildings are there to really help the imagination to flourish as well, you know? And even fewer occupy that sacred place as wellsprings of inspiration. And this is one of them.
We're almost at the end of cruising our way through Britain's best aquatic homes. We've just got one more remarkable building to see before finding out which of these houses will be added to the 2017 shortlist.
It is one thing to build your house on the coast near the sea. It is quite another to build it actually on the beach, exposed to everything that nature can throw at you, or over you for that matter. However, it is possible to build a super robust house, one which is resistant to the forces of the sea, the salts, the tides and the wind. One from which you can sense, feel the power of the crashing waves, all from the comfort of your own armchair.
Seaside plots are notoriously difficult to come by. But as Damion discovered in East Lothian, on the east coast of Scotland, when you do get your hands on a beachy plot, the potential really opens up. After inheriting a bungalow, Archie and Tricia MacDonald had the dream location and the chance to build something really special.
This house isn't just by the sea, it's actually holding it back.
Built right onto the beach, the house anchors itself to the old, ragged sea wall. The elegant lines of the cladding against the rough, ancient stone help the building sing. It's this fine detailing that earned this house its place on the 2017 House of the Year longlist.
Hi.
Hello, Damion.
Archie, how are you?
Nice to see you.
To meet you.
Hello, Damion.
Tricia.
Nice to
meet
see
you too. Just had a great little walk along the beach. The house just looks stunning set back there.
Thank you very much.
Yeah?
Come inside, see the inside.
Thank you.
This is a house in two parts. On one side, a flat-roofed bungalow contains a utility room, family bathroom, 2 bedrooms and a study. On the other, they added a fine, larch-clad extension, which encloses an extraordinary open-plan living area.
Oh, wow. I mean, what a space. I mean, this is just spectacular. Not many people get to just stand here with their morning cup of coffee and just watch the world go by.
You're on holiday really all the time.
It's such an unusual location. I mean, how did you come across it?
Well, it's been in my family since the late 50s. My father was an architect and he was looking for a project, so he bought the house and physically rebuilt it himself. So he was an architect with dirt under his fingers.
The rare thing.
A rare thing. Yeah.
What Tricia and Archie inherited was a one-bed house with its back turned to the sea that faced into a courtyard. They approached local architect Matthew Johnson to give them an extra bedroom, bathroom and a sea view. But Matthew persuaded them to go for something altogether grander, giving Tricia and Archie cinemascope windows with polished concrete sills and sleek open-plan living. Rooms flow like the tide off a skylit corridor, and living spaces are gloriously turned around and opened up to the sea.
You kind of fall in love with all your projects as you do, and it's like really incredibly hard with this one to walk away and hand the keys back over. From my own personal experience, living by the sea has a real positive effect on how you live. I think it's important with the building to keep it as refined and as simple and as clean as possible, and then let the view do the talking.
The experience of living right on the beach is remarkable.
What's a good old Scottish storm like up here?
Quite spectacular.
Yes.
You're lying in your bed, it's high tide, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you hear this boom, boom, boom.
It's quite impressive.
On a good day, the sense of connection with the elements and the sea couldn't be closer.
Oh, wow. I mean, that just changes everything, doesn't it? Just magnificent.
It is.
It really is. As soon as you open this up, you just get all of the sound of the sea coming straight in. It fills the room.
And the smell.
And the smell. Oh, it smells, really is. You're never going to get tired of that, really, are you?
No.
No. No.
I mean, these windows are just, I mean, they're magnificent. But what was it like when you walked in there for the first time and actually saw the scale of that opening and what you were actually capturing?
To stand in that space, just a red steel frame framing the view with a timely ship passing was just superb.
The care and attention that has gone into the exterior of this building really is quite remarkable. From the military precision of each of the large spacings, down to the flush rainwater goods, every single aspect of this house has been considered.
It may look idyllic now, but it wasn't a smooth voyage getting here. When Matthew and the team started work on the old stable block, they realized the rafters were rotten and the whole roof needed replacing. Beneath, there was worse news, that the building's walls were crumbling. Rather than just changing the layout of the rooms, Tricia and Archie had to start again and reconstruct the entire building from scratch. All of this added time and, of course, money to the project.
And all of these additional costs and delays, I mean, this is what you've sunk all the life savings into.
Yes, yeah. So that's how it went when things were liquidated that we weren't expecting to liquidate. And,
the architect.
This is it. This is it. Liquidate the architect.
Luckily for Matthew, that didn't happen, and their collective reward was being longlisted for House of the Year.
The thrill of this house is how Tricia, Archie and Matthew have worked together to take a one-bedroom unit with its back to the sea and reposition it to open up these incredible cinematic views. The sea just isn't on their doorstep anymore. It's in their kitchen, it's in their lounge, and through this piece of architecture, it's in their lives.
We've seen South Street, a rusty industrial riverside box. Ness Point, a rippling clifftop castle. Red Shank, a house masquerading as a bird. Sixwood Lane, an upturned ship on a hill. And Edinburgh Road, a Scottish pimped-out beach hut. A diverse and handsome bunch.
So, 5 beautiful watery offerings. The question is, which of them have the RIBA judges decided to put through to the shortlist?
The head of the jury is architect Deborah Saunt. She's here to give us the results.
So, Deborah, what have you shortlisted from this category?
The first is Ness Point, all the way down in Dover, with this killer view that no photograph ever does justice to. And this house completely grasps it. And we discovered, much to our delight, that this was the only house that really looked at open plan living, both in its summer delightful mode, ha-ha, and then the reality of a British winter. And imagine it here when you've got the storm raging across the channel. Here you can actually close down each of these rooms, so a kitchen that's currently open can become isolated, a dining room, a living room, and you really can sort of close down the house, which is tremendous.
There's an extraordinary glamorous quality to those curving shapes.
Well, we like this as well because when you're an architect, you're told curves are expensive, but this was one of the cheapest houses on the list per square metre. So they really looked at the technical kind of capacity of a building to be sort of sinuous and interesting, but not expensive. So I learned something going to this house, which was great.
Yeah.
That's really exciting. Oh, well, a local one will be really happy. It is such an amazing location, so if we manage to amplify the character of that location, that's great. But it makes all that effort worthwhile.
So now, a second project then, shortlisted in this category.
We have, after lots and lots of debate, Wood Lane made it onto the list. It's so idiosyncratic, it's just a joy to go and visit.
I just thought the place was part seaside house, part Jules Verne balloon or spaceship or something.
In its form, it is out of this world. I mean, it's not trying to be a good neighbour in that deeply contextual way that good, well-behaved architects follow. Yeah. It is a world unto itself, and it's almost as though it's a kind of craft that sets sail, that it's making its own journey. The way it was made, wow. That floating space for making and thinking, I mean, I didn't see anywhere else when we visited that matched that kind of ethereal quality. It was extraordinary.
It's wonderful.
It's fabulous news, fabulous. Open a bottle of bubbly.
So, the undulating white Ness Point and fantastical 6 Wood Lane join Shoreham House and Caring Wood on the shortlist. Over the next 2 programmes, we'll show you more of the long list, reveal the rest of the shortlisted homes, and in the final programme, discover here on Channel 4 the winner of the RIBA House of the Year 2017.
The homes that we live in can be key to our well-being. The architect Bertold Lubetkin, who built some of the finest housing in the country, understood that. He believed that everyone deserved to live in buildings of real quality. In fact, he quit architecture when councils started trying to water down what he was doing. Lubetkin retired and became a pig farmer rather than build anything mediocre, because he knew what a difference architecture can make to people's lives. He was spot on.
Next time, homes in the countryside. 4 groundbreaking and exciting rural houses that are changing the way we define country life.
Wow, it really is like a childhood fantasy come to life.